It's all the way I learn. Still not. Okay, we'll give it a second here. Folks, if you're seeing me live, just bear with me just one moment here. Just trying to make sure we're all set up and running. Hopefully. Hopefully we're all set up and running. Oh boy. This is kind of embarrassing. Alright. Oh. They were getting somewhere. Oh, snip, snap, and shoo, snaps. We're getting there. Oh, shoot. And it dropped me out. Alright, so I guess we are getting there. Just bear with me, folks, here. Drop frames detected. Why are that drop frames being detected? Oh, this is not. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Oh, that's not something I can deal with right now. Okay, so I think we are going to just go ahead and run with it. Alright, so let's do this. Today's date, February 2nd, 2019, and this is how the frack we got here. I'm your host of the most, Will Buchanan, and on how the frack we got here, we simply try to take the week's events and also try to make sense of it all. Pretty much giving you the news and views that we think that here at the how the frack we got here, that I think that make the most sense to actually point out, as well as to let everybody know what's actually truly going on in life. And for the sad part about it is, today is, how can I put this in so many words? Today is, well, kind of weird. I mean, usually, like I said, every other week, we probably have something that Trump has done or something that Trump has said. And, well, for once, it's not actually him. The only way I can start off with the story is to basically play this article.
God wanted Donald Trump to be president. This is according to the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, who says this in a new interview with the Christian Broadcasting Network. Here she is.
I think God calls all of us to fill different roles at different times, and I think that he wanted Donald Trump to become president, and that's why he's there. And I think he has done a tremendous job in supporting a lot of the things that people of faith really care about.
Out front now, Scott Jennings, former advisor to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona. Maria, do you think she's right? God, this is what God wanted?
Well, if he did, it's because he wanted to punish us for taking our democracy for granted and for not ensuring that every person went out there to vote. And this is what we got. Look, I listened to the whole excerpt of the interview in terms of what's available. And one huge word jumped out at me, Aaron: hypocrisy. There was so much hypocrisy in what Sarah Sanders talked about. And the bottom line is that I can't imagine that God would put or would want somebody to be the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, somebody who doesn't understand the word truth, the word honesty, the word humility, the word integrity, the word honor, the word forgiveness. I mean, I could go on and on about how this president is actually the antithesis of Jesus Christ's teachings and anything that real Christians would put on the table as something and someone that they would believe in.
Yeah. So apparently, and that's how we're going to start with. So Sarah Sanders, but the person who swears him down, she's all for telling the truth and whatnot, has turned around and sat there and said, God chose Donald Trump to be president. I'm not one to knock religion. I mean, granted, I know I have my issues with religion. Don't get me wrong about that. But I find it very hard to sit there and say, for lack of better words, you think that some deity has chosen this idiot to become president. Because it could have been possibly that just maybe that you might have got the wording around like, don't make him president. Because I've seen a lot of evangelists go, you know what, Donald Trump is God's chosen candidate. And every time I hear somebody say that, that's pretty much a walk-off moment. Like, you're not going to convince a cult. Let's just be honest. They've already made sure that they're going to go ahead and accept it as it is. I just thought it was funny that Sarah Sanders out of nowhere. She's playing her role because let's be honest, she's going to stay on this train as long as humanly possible because once she's out of a job as a press secretary, good luck trying to get a job anywhere else because you honestly can't say integrity without tripping over every word and every other syllable in the sentence. I'm just being honest. But I just thought that was just interesting as shit, honestly, because God chose Donald Trump to be president. Okay, but another story I was going to go into, where actually was going more into elections, and of course with 2020 coming around, of course there's going to be another crop of potential candidates coming out on both the Democratic and the Republican side of the field, and not to go too much into that, but I honestly, for a lot of people who don't know, there's actually other political parties out there besides the Democrats and Republicans. I mean, you have the Independents, you have the Greens, you have the gubernatorial parties. They just don't get a lot of attention because they don't have the same bankrolls as Democrats and Republicans do. Not to say that, not all Democrats are bad, but, when's the last time you had a Republican in office and the country wasn't going to shit? So, but again, I'm not Democratic by any means because I have an issue with Democrats too. Democrats have an issue with unity and with standing behind something, which the Republicans have no problem doing. It's just that the Republicans are corporate bought and really don't care about the people and don't care about minorities and pretty much hate women. If you're a Republican, prove me wrong because that seems to be your party's nature. But aside from that, Mitch McConnell, as I would call him, Turtle Man, pretty much has an issue with the new Congress, mostly the House of Representatives, which is mostly Democratic. He had an issue with them basically saying that they wanted to make the election day a federal holiday. He called it a power grab. Now, it's kind of funny that Mitch McConnell, of all people, is going to talk about any other opposition gaining power when he himself has been the wall that Donald Trump has always wanted, just only he wanted it in real life and not in politics to where everything is blocked. Keep in mind, Mitch McConnell has actually himself reiterated himself multiple times when they tried to pass bills. He wouldn't allow it to go to the Senate. Because he's the majority on the Senate floor, he can do that. So it's not surprising that he'll also turn around and sit there and say that, we can't make this a federal holiday, which, because of his reasons, which is kind of funny, he turns around and says, that Democrats want taxpayers on the hook for generous new benefits for federal bureaucrats and government employees, including a new paid holiday for government workers. So let's point something out here. You're against it because it would be a paid holiday to where employees would get paid just like we would because federal holidays are mandated paydays. That doesn't sound like a very democratic, that doesn't sound like a very democracy balanced person to me. That sounds more along the lines of somebody that just wants to say something because, let's be honest, it's amazing how he's going to sit there. I mean, like I said, this comes from the same person who wouldn't move on the government shutdown unless he kept on passing the ball to Trump. Because, Trump wanted his wall. He actually held us at bay for 35 plus days just to get a fucking wall. Or to get funding for his wall. And so, Mitch McConnell decided that in this case, we're not, I was like, well, we can't make it election day. Which, if you listen to any of my podcasts before, well, I've always said it best. The best way to fix our electoral system is to make it easier for people to vote. Which means automatic voter registration, which means if you're a citizen, actually the funny part is, if you have ever registered, if you register for elective service, if you're a guy, you're about to go into college, or you're about to turn 18, or, as you graduate, you have to sign up for selective service. Selective service used to be what they used to use for the draft, which is where it all originated from. But at the same time, when you register, in any case, it should be automatic voter registration, which makes it easier for people to go to the polls and vote. But at the same time, Election Day should also be a federal holiday, which means that everybody doesn't have to work, should be able to go down to the voting booth and vote as well. It's not that fucking hard. Every other country's done it but us. But it is amazing to me that Mitch McConnell, again, will give any other reason to sit there and do something that is positive, especially in this case, because it is trying to be pushed through. I mean, it's already been pushed to the House. It's trying to get pushed to the Senate. Like I said, Mitch McConnell, because he's the Senate Majority Leader, has the ability to block bills from coming in. So the whole thing about this bill being a federal holiday is genius, in my opinion. I mean, like I said, if you really want to fix the political system, there's so many ways you can fix it. Number one, get rid of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is an outdated system that was only meant for a population of less than 25 million. We've blown past that. Number two, make elections a federal holiday, which means that if you have to work, you should have to miss work just to go vote. And number three, automatic voter registration. If those three things were done, it's a whole lot easier for the democratic process to happen. Oh, and outlaw lobbying too, and overturn Citizens United, which means that now donations can actually have to be public knowledge, not private. At the same time, corporations can't donate truckloads upon truckloads of money and not be caught. Then again, it goes back to lobbying, which a lot of people always have an issue with lobbying, where lobbying, in my mind, should be illegal. I mean, because think about it. If lobbying is kind of like, it's like baseball. Now, baseball, for all those who follow it, it's great. Not my favorite sport because it's amazing to let a guy like Alex Rodriguez in the Hall of Fame, but yet Pete Rose is still in baseball hell because he betted on games. But that's a whole other story. But the whole thing about baseball is just that baseball has no salary cap. So you have guys who are playing over 162 games a year can make 245, 300. I mean, the sky's the limit. There's no salary cap. So you can pay them as much as you want to, and they'll play. In the same sense, that's kind of how lobbying works in Congress right now. Because the ones that are actually paying the politicians the most are the ones who are getting sway. And that's the reason why lobbying should be outlawed, because, again, if you can pay these politicians in super PACs and donor PACs, then of course you're going to have their sway. But again, it's one of those things that, like I said, the way that you fix our electoral system is that some things need to go, some things need to be added, and some things need to be honestly made a federal offense. But it's funny that Mitch McConnell is going to have an issue with something that's actually beneficial when he has no problem passing things for the rich. Like I said, he is the richest politician in the Senate, coming from one of the poorest states in the U.S., and Kentucky votes for this man every freaking election. We'll never understand it. But speaking of weird things to happen, so here's the thing. If you're an educator, I have all the respect in the world for you. Honestly, you have one of the toughest jobs in the U.S., along with first responders and really anybody else that's in a situation where it impacts a lot of lives. Now, I've always said it best, and I've been an outspoken person about this. Educators should honestly be paid a lot more than what they're getting right now. And at the same time, their funding, their licensing, all that good stuff that comes with it should not be so hard for them to get. But if you're in a state like Oklahoma, you pretty much deal with this.
Crumbling textbooks, leaking ceilings, 4-day school weeks, and rising class sizes.
Enough is enough. Last year we had 4 different Spanish teachers. We can't keep a teacher for even 1 year. I'm frustrated with education funding in the state of Oklahoma right now. It's been getting worse and worse and worse, and we've got seniors that are graduating this year that have never been in a fully funded school. They don't even know what it looks like. They didn't even realize when this walkout started that this was not normal.
Since 2008, our education budget has been cut by $180 million.
When I started teaching, I knew that the pay wasn't great. However, 10 years later, I didn't realize that I would be buying the textbooks for my students.
I am running because we've tried everything to get this legislature to act, and they haven't.
Being in the House of Representatives means just that. You represent a community. Once elected, the first thing I will do is ensure that the members of my community are heard in the House.
Education is not a Democratic or Republican or independent issue. It's an Oklahoman issue, and it affects us all, and we all want what's best for our families and for our kids.
They deserve somebody in charge that will actually listen to them. That's where I come in, and hopefully I can actually affect change.
I'll see you in November.
Now, that is just part of it, to where, of course, a lot of Oklahoma teachers are running for office. Here's the fucked up part, because the second part of this article is just that they're actually, the Oklahoma House Representatives is passing a bill that basically prevents teachers from protesting. If they protested, it would permanently revoke their teacher certifications for protesting, which is amazing to me, because you are basically saying that if they protest, which they have every right to do, all teachers have the right to do this. You know, if you're not actually getting what you need, and if you're a part of the union, the first thing you do is strike. That's just true. But they're now making it official mandates to not turn around and say, okay, you want to strike? That's fine. You lose your credentials. You have no right to be a teacher. What does that say, honestly, about what does it also say about our system if the Oklahoma legislature is trying to pass a bill that prevents teachers from protesting? That is saying a lot. That is saying along the lines of, oh, we don't really give a shit. You want to protest about the job? Go ahead. You lose your job, and you will never be able to teach. And Oklahoma is not the only state that's trying to do this. I mean, Tennessee tried this measure before; it was shot down. Florida has actually got this in their offices right now. I want to say Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina. They've all tried to introduce legislation to hold, as they call it, to hold the teachers accountable. And I'm like, what is the whole point of holding an educator accountable? I mean, they are woefully underpaid, they are woefully understaffed, they are overworked, they're in overcrowded classrooms because of districts always rezoning. At the same time, a lot of these teachers have to also play a parent, because Lord knows exactly what kind of kids you get. But when you have a classroom of almost 45 to 50 more kids versus one individual, you expect that one individual to be able to reach 45 to 50 kids? When I was growing up, the classroom was no bigger than maybe 22 kids when I was coming in grade school. I mean, when I was from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, my classroom of individuals was never bigger than the number 24. So you're sitting there saying to me that nowadays educators have to go in and teach a classroom of double that size, and you still expect them to be effective, but you still take everything away from them because, you know, like I'll use Tennessee as an example. Tennessee has gutted education so many times, but guess what? We've always had sports teams. We've always had new stadiums. We've always had, we've always had these other things that are built toward more tourism than anything else. But when it honestly comes to education, it is almost along the lines of just, it is almost scary how quickly that if it came down between education and it came down between tourism, education gets thrown out the window. So I don't blame those teachers for actually walking out and striking. I actually recommend it. Because, I mean, yeah, it is in some sense you are putting the child in a rudimentary situation, but it's not the teachers doing it. It's our own legislation, and the simple fact of the matter is the teacher's not getting help. And I'll always be on the educator's side, because pay these educators what they should be paid, give them the resources that they need. On top of that, stop gutting funding to the point to now you shouldn't be surprised about how some kids' educations are and why some people always sit there and say about public education. I came from public education and I loved it. And I have nothing against out there. And I have nothing against those individuals that have the ability to send their kids off to private schools, academies, what have you. You know, I'm not going to knock you for that. If you have the means to send your child there because you think they'll get a quality education, go for it. I am merely speaking about the ones that don't have that ability to send their child out to those schools, and they're depending on public education to at least give their child a decent shot. Because let's be honest, the way the scales are, and the way they're heading there, the way the scales are heading to, I should say, the way the scales are heading to, you're not going to have a decent shot in life if you are not given a decent education. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean college, because I can go on a rant about how schools need to include music programs again, how they need to include physical education programs, how schools need to include woodworking class and metal shop class, and all those things that I had, auto shops too, because, and I'll say it, and I'll leave it at here. A quality education doesn't always have to be in college. I mean, trade schools, you go to a trade school, learn a trade, and still have a great career. Because there's nothing wrong with being a welder, an electrician, a plumber, a contractor, in multiple other areas of trades that you can go into and still make a kick-ass living. There is nothing wrong with that. But it all depends on the education that you get to get you on that path to where you want to be. And if that education is crappy, then why are we not surprised that we got a lot of crappy kids? Just saying. But again, not to go on a rant, because I've always felt that way, because I've had a lot of great educators in my life, and it's impacted me to where it's gotten me here. So I always have a soft spot for educators, because they actually impact children's lives, and honestly, they should be given more. They actually should be paid more and given more than honestly any other part of any state legislature. But then again, I digress, because I don't want to go too far into that. So speaking of other things that need to be helped, well, it's kind of funny where NBC posted this out about Trump's tax plan. You know, that one tax plan that he sat there and said, well, you know what? If we give money to the upper class, it's supposed to boost investment and job growth. And they just came out and said it had no major impact on business spending, which is actually funny after the biggest overhaul of the tax code, that after this fiscal stimulus package, which is what they're calling it, honestly have no effect. I mean, they slashed the corporate tax rate from 21% to 21% from 35%, saying that it would boost spending. It did not. Which is funny, because all of us want to sit there and go, you gave tax cuts to corporate and nothing increased? But we thought it would work. No, dumbass, it doesn't work. The funny part is, I feel like, you know what, this is what redundancy looks like. Redundancy in so many ways looks like this. And it's like Reaganomics. It's almost like you want to sit there and go, Reaganomics was the same thing. If you give the top tier all this funding, it'll eventually trickle down. I will say this one. I've said it once, and I'll say it before. Reaganomics is bullshit. Giving the top percent all the tax breaks and leaving everybody else out only fills up the top. It doesn't trickle down. It's not water. It doesn't trickle down when the cup is full, but the cup itself is bottomless. So nothing ever gets full, which means nothing ever trickles down, which means that the whole argument that they provide is bullshit. But I shouldn't be surprised, because all of Trump's friends are in corporate, and that's also another thing I'm going to come up to very shortly about that, was that the only way this plan benefited anybody was corporate based. And if you, like I said, if you were anywhere above the $1 million line as far as your income goes, or you're in a corporation, or anything of that matter, if you were one of those things, then you benefited. Don't believe me? Here, this story actually came out like I said, with this tax bill that just went into effect last month. Here's what happened with Foxconn, and this was actually funny because, like I said, they changed their mind, but
today it is shifting the focus of its Wisconsin operation. The president attended the groundbreaking last year, but instead of building a factory for display screens, the company now says it will focus on research and development. Wisconsin lured Foxconn with billions in tax incentives. The company in turn promised to create 13,000 manufacturing jobs, but missed its hiring quota last year.
And again, that itself Foxconn, which if you don't know who Foxconn is, Foxconn was actually an overseas company that was actually really coming over to the U.S. and opened up a plant in Michigan, as they reported. It was supposed to be, because of the tax benefits that they're getting, they were supposed to actually open up with 75,000 jobs. Now, as you probably heard, they shifted their focus, which it's always funny when you hear shifted their focus, because that's a company buzzword for saying, yeah, we changed our minds. It's like saying, we're not gonna do that. Instead, we're gonna do this. And it only happened after the tax plan kicked in and they saw their benefits. And they said, oh, well, we're still going to keep jobs, but we won't be able to keep the same job. We won't be able to bring in as many jobs as we said we would do. So again, welcome to the Kansas City Shuffle. We got ours. You go get yours. And I'm not surprised because, like I said, Foxconn itself was actually reconsidering, but they turned around and said, like we said before, like you just saw, well, we'll still do it, but just not the way you want to. So again, this is the reason why the tax plan only benefits a certain tier and everybody else gets shafted. But then again, we shouldn't be surprised because only a Republican thinks that if the rich pay less, we somehow get more. And historically, and I say historically, the way that America has thrived in back in the times was that the tax rate for corporations was much higher and the rich paid more. They're rich. And here's the argument before I go into this next story. And here's the argument that I've never understood. It's just that whenever I hear someone say whenever I've always suggested, well, if the rich paid more as they did in the past, then we would thrive. And people go, well, they already paid more than their fair share. But these are going for people that are not rich. But they'll defend the rich. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you defend someone who literally is not going to defend you? Now, my thing is, if you're rich, you honestly have no problems in this world. But you ought to pay more. This is true. The rich, whenever the rich have paid more, and the rich have always paid more, America has thrived. But when they pay less, we hit financial turmoil because somebody's got to make up for the difference somewhere. And like I said, here we are again, history repeating itself. So wouldn't be surprised that if the next person that comes in, may she be a woman, as far as the next presidential election, may she be a woman, and hopefully come in and fix it, hopefully come in and undo that. But speaking of things to be undone, Mueller, which we haven't heard a lot from Robert Mueller, if you believe every story out there that he is heading toward the end of his investigation. I've always said let the man do his work, because like I said, he's already gotten well over 48 different indictments. He's already caught like 7 to 11 people. 5 of them are major players in Trump's cabinet. And of course, his most recent one, where he basically had Roger Stone arrested. And it's funny where they sat there and said this little tidbit.
Prosecutors say the evidence they seized in that early morning raid of Roger Stone's home was voluminous and complex. FBI agents hauled away multiple hard drives, computers, cell phones, as well as email accounts and bank records going back several years.
It is so voluminous and complex that a speedy trial is literally impossible, so we stipulated to that.
Prosecutors charged Stone, a former Trump advisor, on 7 counts, including lying to Congress about his efforts to obtain hacked emails from WikiLeaks. The White House says the charges have nothing to do with the president. Stone insists he's not guilty. Asked again today if he would cooperate with Mueller.
All I can tell you today is I will tell the truth. I don't possess any knowledge of any wrongdoing by the President of the United States.
The FBI could be in a position of identifying other people that they may charge with crimes or other crimes beyond that which is already charged in this indictment. I think that there is likely to be a treasure trove of information.
The latest twist in an investigation gripping the nation. Kristen Welker, NBC.
Every time I look at Roger Stone, I keep on thinking to myself, this guy looks like every Bond villain from every James Bond movie that you expect him just to swivel around in a chair, just have a white cat and be like, Mr. Bond, I've been expecting you. And every time I look at him, it's like, if you thought of every bad guy you've ever seen in any movie, to me, that's like Roger Stone. I'm like, how in the world could you sit there and just, the way he sits, it's almost confident. Like, you got nothing on me. And it's like, when they use the word voluminous, I'm like, yeah, he had a shitload of evidence. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, they went in and they raided, and that was another thing that Republicans had issue about, was the fact of how they raided Roger Stone. Oh, it didn't need a SWAT team. It didn't take this. Oh, really? So you want a casual knock on the door to wait for him to come to the door? Screw that. If he should be treated like a criminal, then go in there with the full SWAT team. I'm not going to complain. But at the same time, it's what they pulled back, multiple cell phones, hard drives, emails. I'm thinking to myself, hang on a second. Time out. If you have, and I'm not saying I'm a rich man by any means, but I have one cell phone. If you have multiple cell phones, that's suspect by so many ways. Hard drives, I'm a tech guy. I'm always going to have hard drives and parts and computers. But again, in my mind, when they seize a lot of things from your home, and at the same time, it's not questionable. I mean, it's like saying, when it's there and they're snatching that much stuff from your house, then in my mind, it's like, okay, yeah, you got something that they want. And like I said, whoever Mueller has tagged to this point has yet to be absolved, if you will. No, he's never indicted somebody and it didn't turn out to be exactly what it is, because Michael Floyd, Manafort, Cohen, it's almost like he's taken out every one of Trump's top advisors, and every one of them has turned or flipped or became state's evidence. None of them have ever sat there and fell on the sword. So that tells me off the bat that if he's got something on Stone, it is concrete. And like I said, another thing I'll say about the investigation, people always want this investigation to be over, and Trump's like, he keeps on saying, there's no collusion, okay? This is a witch hunt. Well, this witch hunt has already gotten 5 people indicted, 37 indictments, and pretty much put a lot of corrupt people out of power. So for it to be a witch hunt, it is definitely hitting a coven. That's all I'm saying. But again, let the man do his work, because at this point, if we all hope to be, like I said, I keep hoping for the president to be arrested. Now, of course, to this day, a sitting president has never been indicted. But the funny part is, this is the same Congress, this is the same type of Congress that tried to go after Bill Clinton because he lied about getting blown in the White House. Not the fact that he corrupted money, not the fact that he cooperated money, not the fact that he screwed over policy, not the fact that he went to war without issue. He lied about getting head in the White House. At this point, it's like that bar is set so low. I mean, getting Agent Orange shouldn't be that fucking hard. But again, I digress. But like I said, speaking about the presidential candidates for 2020, for a lot of people that know who they are, like I said, there's a few out there, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, and Beto O'Rourke, who are all coming out. But if you don't know who they are, just to give you some background, this right here actually shows, the potential candidates for 2020.
Go look at the 2020 Democratic presidential field to see who's up, who's down, and who's not making any waves at all. It's announcement season. Lots of candidates getting into the race, so there's been plenty of jockeying. Now this time around, we didn't actually take anyone off our list from last month, but we did move a few people around. The major beneficiaries were New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who moved from the 10 spot to the 8 spot, and Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, who went from 8 to 6. Why, you ask? Well, Gillibrand formed an exploratory committee earlier this month, and Brown is making stops in early primary states over the next month that suggests he's probably going to run. Our top 3 stayed the same. At number 3, former Vice President Joe Biden. Look, Biden has a lot going for him. So why is he at number 3? Well, number 1, he hasn't announced yet, and he still could decide not to run. And then number 2, there's real questions about whether an older white man who spent more than 4 decades in elected office is what the Democratic Party wants right now. Ranking number 2 is former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Look, O'Rourke is without question the buzziest candidate in the potential Democratic field, even though he did lose his Senate race against Ted Cruz in 2018. Right now, he's on a find myself soul-searching solo road trip around the country. We'll see what happens when that ends. And at number 1 for a second straight month, California Senator Kamala Harris. She looks like the modern Democratic Party. She's an African-American woman with a liberal but not too liberal voting record who is an able and capable speaker and debater. If the last month is any indication, this next month is going to be just as hot with candidates getting in and maybe getting out of the race. Make sure to check out CNN.com.
It's interesting way he sat there and said about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, definitely someone to look out for as far as her coming up. I got no issue with the woman because, like I said, honestly, at this point, let's just be real. We should have already had a woman president by now. Whether how you feel about Hillary Clinton, she was the qualified individual to be in office. Even though the DNC screwed with Bernie Sanders to make her the head person, we already know. But going up against Baby Orange, she should have been the president. We should have been saying Madam President by now and been well way off. Now, like I said, I do love the fact that of the Democratic Party actually showing new candidates. I don't see Joe Biden really running because, like I said, the man ran with President Obama. I think he's personally done. It's like, dude, you had to fight a Congress that really wasn't going to work with you. So I think the man is done. Cory Booker, he might actually do it, but then again, he hasn't really said a lot since announcing. Kamala Harris, definitely trying to gun for it. Probably one of the favorites. Elizabeth Warren, also a good woman, also a good female candidate, just because of her record. The simple fact of the matter is, she actually cornerstoned the CFB, which is basically the financial bureau that keeps you from hitting predatory lending and you're holding about your credit. She used to run that. So again, great choice as well. And Bernie Sanders, if he chose to run again, because Bernie actually has some right ideas. And it's the funny part is everybody thought they were too. How can I put this in so many words? Everybody thought that the entire process with Bernie was like, well, it's just too literal. It's just this. It's just that. Okay. That's honestly the way I feel. Like which part of that was wrong, in my opinion. But again, looking forward to see exactly what goes from there and to see what comes out from it. But it's always interesting to me when they always turn around and be like, well, it was just that he was this, and I was like, and if he was, great. Maybe he can be that if you allow it to be. There's nothing wrong with socialist ideas. But again, and I know a lot of people are going to be going, well, what about the Republican side? Well, let's be honest. You Republicans at this point are too busy bidding the knee to Trump. Nobody's going to come forward from the Republican Party and be like, I'm announcing my candidacy. Well, at least not yet. There may be somebody, but like I said, they may actually try to just keep Trump in line just because at this point, say one thing about the Republicans, they bend the knee and they all fall in line, but not one of them has sat there and stood out and sat there and said, I'm going to run against Trump. So, as far as we know at this point, we don't have any Republicans, and I'm trying to be always middle of the road. There have been any Republicans that have announced for candidacy yet. No independents, no Goober parties, no Green Party independents have yet to announce. So far, all the Democrats have. So we as we get closer to the Democratic race, as we get closer to the 2020 election, that may change. Although I do believe there's a certain deadline before they have to declare to actually be involved in it, but I'll have to look more into that. So here's the one thing I did want to point out, which I thought was very interesting, was that if you're on an iPhone, and you probably know about this, but if you don't, you might want to start paying attention right now.
FaceTime lets users eavesdrop on other people without them picking up the call. It is activated when users call someone via FaceTime, swipe up to add another person to the call, and add their own phone number. The person who initiated the call is then able to hear live audio on the other person's phone, even though the recipient has not accepted the call. In some cases, the bug can also show live video of the other person if they press a volume button to dismiss the call. Apple said it identified a fix, and it will release it in a software update later this week. Now, to avoid the bug, Dave Briggs, disable FaceTime on all your devices until Apple releases the software update. On an iPhone or iPad, go to Settings, scroll down to FaceTime, then toggle off the green button at the top of the screen. Got that?
And go get an Android.
I say that wholeheartedly. Get an Android. And I'm not saying that because I have an Android, but let's be honest, my Android has never sat there and let my calls and stuff get screened from other people. And actually, as of this actual broadcast, for all those that are wondering, is that fix been put in yet? No. Apple said that the fix will be available sometime next week. So you're gonna sit there and tell me that individuals. And I kind of feel bad for those that have iPhones, because I'm not saying iPhone users are snobby. Yeah, I'm not saying you're not. I'm not saying that you're superior or you feel superior. But I find it funny that in the iPhone Samsung debate, they always love to stand and say, well, we can FaceTime. Well, now you can FaceTime, and other people who are not a part of your conversation can now hear your conversation. Where the Android users are still like, my phone is good. I don't have to worry about listening to me. So it's kind of funny that iPhone users have become their own NSA now. But like I said, hopefully your fix will come in next week. We hope. But anybody that has dealt with iPhones before, good luck. So also another thing I did want to point out was the fact of this is kind of actually stupid. This is kind of just along the lines of just what the fuck. So everybody remembers Herman Cain, right? You know, the former CEO of Godfather's Pizza, the guy who was running for president. Unfortunately, he's reared his ugly head again because he is actually on a list for the nominees for the Federal Reserve Board. So what does that mean? Okay, so the Federal Reserve Board pretty much are the ones that manage the interest rates that loans and banks use in the U.S. to charge their customers. So those on the Federal Reserve Board actually have the ability to raise or decline rates. So with that being said, this fucking idiot, if he is elected to the board, does have the ability to raise or decline rates. In the same sense that you think about this, and the reason why I say that is because this is how much impact this man can have. When I say he can raise or decline rates, it affects everything across the board: stocks, interest rates, mutual funds, all the above, loans, home loans, mortgages. The rate itself goes across the board and affects it. Keep in mind, this is the same idiot that came up with that 999 tax plan, which means a flat rate tax, which means that everybody would be charged the same tax rate, including corporations, which if you're a business owner, you'll love a flat 9% tax rate, because that basically means that you'll get more money on the back end. However, at the same time, it's one of those doomed to fail programs, because if everybody's paying a flat rate in tax, that simply means that at this point, for lack of better words, the actual returns that people get back will be worse on the back end. But again, if you're a corporation, you love it because it works more in your favor. So again, you know, they didn't sit there and say he was a shoo-in, but they turned around and sat there and said, well, he is on the list. So we hope he doesn't make it. Another thing I did want to point out, one of our other short stories, was that this one here. Well, if you don't know about this one, where the restaurant owner bans Make America Great Again hats, but then apologizes. So the thing I don't get about this, because this guy, long story short, had pretty much sat there and said, if you come to my restaurant, he says, but if you come to my restaurant wearing a MAGA cap, you aren't getting served. Same as if you come in wearing a swastika, white hood, or any other symbol of intolerance and hate. So, okay, bravo for that guy, because he's a business owner. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. He has the right to refuse service, as so many of these so-called Americans that down Muslims and black people and brown people all together will sit there and say so many times, I have the right to refuse service. And so I thought it was great. If the man doesn't want any MAGA hats in his restaurant, he has the right to do so as a business owner. He turns around and apologizes. And literally the apology starts off with, I want to start by apologizing to my staff and partners at Warsaw. Making a public statement without taking my team's thoughts into consideration was disrespectful and reckless. My goal at Warsaw was to be a restaurant where all employees and staff are treated with respect and trust, and by making that public statement without your consent, I failed that goal, and I will work hard to earn back that trust. And this is only after the restaurant's Facebook and Yelp pages were overloaded with negative comments. So let me understand this correctly. The only reason you apologize is because so-called butthurt MAGA fans probably went on there and talked shit on Yelp and Facebook to where it's almost on the lines of, oh, we need to stop this. I'm sorry, if I'm a business owner, I'm gonna be the same way. You got a MAGA hat on? Get the fuck out. I mean, in the same sense, it's always funny when people always talk about, these are the same type of people that talk about, don't step on my rights. But if a Muslim steps into their shop, they will quickly turn around and sit there and say, oh, well, you're not welcome here. I don't serve Muslims. And they will be like, well, why are my rights being infringed upon? I can refuse the right to refuse service to anybody. Okay, let's switch it around. So you go in with a MAGA hat, and there's an Indian dude right there and telling you flat out, no, the fuck, you can't come in my store. I don't like that hat. And I have the right to refuse services like I did, just like you did. And then you turn around and become Facebook keyboard commando and go on their site talking about, I wasn't allowed in because I have a MAGA hat on. And you and your other friends, who are also MAGA people, decide to keep on berating this restaurant because you weren't allowed to serve there, but you force the owner to apologize to there and say, you know what, I take back what I said, everybody's welcome. Now, I keep on saying this many times. As a business owner, you do have to remain impartial. This is true. You do have to remain impartial. But there's nothing wrong with taking a stand. That's like me if I own a restaurant. If I own a restaurant, I said, look, keep your MAGA hats at home. If I see you in a MAGA hat, you're not getting served. Simple and plain. And you can sit there and argue that your rights are being infringed upon, but let's be honest. When you come into someone else's service, they have the right to refuse you service. But you can't turn around and sit there and use the same law to benefit your cause when they turn around and do the same thing you did and now you want to cry foul. It doesn't work like that. But then again, that's the definition of white privilege. So, I understand what the restaurant owner was trying to do. I really think he shouldn't apologize. I personally think he should have stood by it because, like I said, they will do that to us with a smile on their face, but when we do that to them, they call it oppression, when that's the whole idea of what white privilege is. When they think it's oppression, we call it equality because it's the same line they're using against us. But again, it's his restaurant. He can decide what he wants to do. I just think that he should have stuck with it because, like I said, it did make a difference in where he stood. So another story I was going to point out was the Trump was basically Baby George putting out his drug price plan, which he is proposing to basically eliminate the middleman behind drug companies. The problem with that plan is, and I wish I had an article for that, I apologize, but the problem with that plan is it doesn't really help it doesn't help those that actually need necessary drugs like diabetes, heart medication, things of that nature, because the prices for those things are still freaking sky high. And Trump's plan really doesn't do anything to affect them. But at this point, it's the only thing that Mitch McConnell, Turtle Man, and the Senate are trying to push through, while the Democrats are pretty much saying Medicare should be allowed to basically open up the other drug markets, which is Canada, South America, Asia, Europe, because the reason why those areas have very low prices on their drugs is because there's widespread competition. The U.S. does not have widespread competition. Everything's in the U.S. So, I mean, that's one thing about it is where Medicare could negotiate drug prices, but the Republican Party believed that the government should stay out of it by also making the government stay into it. I know, that's Republican nature. That's Republican nature. That's Republican nature in any sense of the word, that they will turn around and somehow say, well, the government we need to have less government and everything by interjecting government into everything. If you try to understand it, it's just going to fuck you up. So, also another thing that's going on as well. I'm sorry, guys. I was trying to think and burp and talk, and it did not come out well. So, another thing I wanted to point out was that this historian said the one thing that rich people that need to be said, and it was actually said at the World Economic Forum, and I just want to pass this along as far as what he pointed out.
Elite gathering in Davos, Switzerland, to discuss bold new ideas. But one man, historian Rutger Bregman, made a claim that took many attendees by surprise. Let's listen.
Almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance, right? And of the rich just not paying their fair share. I mean, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one's allowed to speak about water. 10 years ago, the World Economic Forum asked the question, what must industry do to prevent a broad social backlash? The answer is very simple. Just stop talking about philanthropy and start talking about taxes.
And Rutger joins me now from Amsterdam. He is a historian and author of Utopia for Realists, How We Can Build the Ideal World. Rutger, thank you so much for being with us. That little video of yours has had quite the journey on social media where we saw it, and we thought it was very interesting because, you know, you're sort of bringing up the question of philanthropy versus taxes. So public good coming either through the individual generosity of billionaires or through, you know, programs that are decided upon by our elected representatives, right? So tell us, first of all, what do you have against philanthropy? Why don't you like philanthropy?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with philanthropy. But the thing at the World Economic Forum is that here are the world's richest, the most powerful people talking about transparency and education and all these kind of things that all sound very nice. But then if you really look what's behind all that is a business model that is all about exploiting people who do the real work and not paying your fair share in taxes. So when philanthropy becomes a distraction from that issue, you know, the real issue, then I think we should, you know, be careful.
It's interesting because in Davos, obviously, you're bringing up the elephant in the...
And I'm just going to leave that there just because it is, like I said, it's actually on CBS.com if you do want to watch that. It's well over 10 minutes, so I didn't want to actually, you know, keep you guys on there. But pretty much I like what he said, where, you know, there's nothing wrong with philanthropy, but at the same time, you honestly have a lot of individuals who have the means and ways to change the world as they see fit. And the thing about it is, the one thing that I ever talk about, like he said, was taxes. For some odd reason, it always comes down to the simple fact of the matter is just that when it comes down to rich folks and it comes down to those in economical powers, they don't ever want to sit there and say, yes, the rich need to pay more. It's almost like this. It's almost like this word of just. It's almost forbidden to say it. It's like saying the wrong code word that gets you kicked out of the cool house. And it's true. He pointed out, it's like, how in the world could you be at a World Economic Forum and you're talking about philanthropy when you guys need to be talking about taxes? You know, the one thing that when you guys were paying the most, America flourished. Again, that's history. And of course, a historian would know that, you know, when the rich are paying more, we thrived. I think he has a point to something. That's just me. But the next couple of things I want to talk about before we get to our good news portion of the world. Now, I will say this. There is a certain stigma out there that just doesn't seem to go away, especially when we're talking about individuals pretty much coming to our shores. Like I said before, America is not a quilted blanket. We are a diverse pot of many different ethnicities, religions, things of that nature. It's a big old melting pot. We're goulash, if you will. We are goulash, and there's nothing wrong with being goulash. But again, there always seems to be this lying sense of assimilation that has to be done in the U.S. And the thing about it is, I never thought I would hear this from a guy I respected. Because like I said, I'm not a journalist. I've never trained to be a journalist. I'm not, you know, I mean, I talk a lot, but that's only because, you know, I have a motor mouth, but that's true. But at the same time, I've never actually considered myself to be a journalist, but I always had that journalist nature to where whatever I said or did, I made sure I was able to speak from a place of facts and nonfiction and be able to go from there. That being said, it kind of messed me up to hear one of the guys I respect in the journalism world say this.
NBC News weighing in on controversial
remarks made by veteran anchor Tom Brokaw about Hispanics.
releasing a statement moments ago saying Tom's comments were inaccurate and inappropriate, and we are glad he apologized. Brian Stelter is out front.
Hispanics should work harder at assimilation. That's one of the things I've been saying for a long time.
Veteran TV journalist Tom Brokaw now trying to walk that back, apologizing for his statements about Latinos not fitting in to American culture. Now dozens of Latino leaders are demanding more from NBC, saying his comments are part of a legacy of anti-Latino sentiment that is spreading freely in 2019.
A lot of this we don't want to talk about.
Brokaw, speaking on Sunday's Meet the Press, said many Republicans see the growth of Hispanics in the U.S. helping Democrats.
Also, I hear when I push people a little harder, I don't know whether I want brown grandbabies. I mean, that's also a part of it.
There, with talk of racial animus, he upset some on the right, like Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush, who tweeted, "I am one of those little brown ones, and I was loved by my grandparents." What Brokaw said next about conflicting cultures stirred even more anger.
They ought not to be just codified in their communities, but make sure that all of their kids are learning to speak English and that they feel comfortable in the communities. And that's going to take outreach on both sides, frankly.
What many people heard was an old and unfair stereotype.
We also need to adjust what we think of them as America.
PBS correspondent Yamiche Alcindor pushed back on Brokaw.
I grew up in Miami where people speak Spanish, but their kids speak English. Yes. And the idea that we think of American can only speak English as if Spanish and other languages wasn't always part of America is some ways troubling.
The show moved on, but the conversation was just beginning. Brokaw, who covered the civil rights movement, seemed out of touch with America today. Texas Democrat Joaquin Castro called the comments xenophobic and called Brokaw stunningly ignorant of Hispanic culture. When Brokaw first expressed regret, tweeting, "I feel terrible, a part of my comments on Hispanics offended some members of that proud culture," the National Association of Hispanic Journalists called Brokaw's comments inaccurate and slammed him, saying, "It only further demonstrates Brokaw's lack of understanding of what forced assimilation does to communities." The 78-year-old special correspondent continued tweeting, saying, "I am sorry, truly sorry, my comments were offensive to many. The great enduring American tradition of diversity is to be celebrated and cherished." Now some of Brokaw's colleagues are coming to his defense, Joe Scarborough saying hopefully he will be shown grace. Meantime, an alliance of Latino groups wants NBC to do more to show the changing face of America.
It's interesting what they said they want. They pretty much sat there and said, okay, so again, a guy I respected growing up, if you've watched NBC, Tom Brokaw was a part of it. No different, really no different than the Walter Cronkite of CBS, and of course, so many other ones. There was World News Tonight with, what the sad part is? I'm trying to remember the guy on ABC. World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. There we go. Peter Jennings, another one. Oh God, that says a lot about my age. You know who Peter Jennings is. You know who Peter Jennings is. Peter Jennings is also another respected journalist who used to do ABC World News Tonight, which he doesn't do anymore, but he used to. But Tom Brokaw, again, one of the journalists I respected just because he did cover the civil rights area in the 60s with NBC. His comment alone, as far as assimilation goes, he was. I mean, let's be honest, it was out of touch. There's no way to walk that back. If you turn around and sit there and say that, if they worked a little bit harder at assimilating into our country, I'm like, dude, I was born in this country and I still haven't assimilated yet. And you're telling a group of Hispanics that they can do the same, you can expect their outrage. You can expect their anger. I get that wholeheartedly. But, when you sit there and tell, when he's talking to other people, it's like, can they accept it? Can they actually accept Hispanic people? And they turn around to them and say, well, he goes, well, I don't know if they're ready. I don't know if I can accept a little brown baby. And it's like, it's almost on the sense of, you would think as a journalist, that's where he would sit there and say, that's the feedback I got from them. And that, I said, when I heard that, I had to stop talking to him. I was pissed. I was angry because, how in the world do we come so far to where you will reject, we say we progressed so far in the U.S., but yet we're still acting like it's the 1950s. That for simple fact of the matter, that a person of a certain descent can still turn around and be hated on because they look different from you. Now, you would think that, that used to be a Tom Brokaw of old, and if everybody heard that part, like, okay, he reported what they said, but that's not his view. But when he's, 78, and like some people said, he's out of touch, I think that, yeah, his comments were way off, were way inappropriate. Exactly, it should be. But at the same time, it's like, I understand that his comments were inappropriate, but at the same time, it's almost along the lines of, what are you expecting NBC to do? I mean, aside from taking him off the air, probably not having him at so many other, correspondents, because he was still a special news correspondent. I mean, unless you're expecting him to be at the next apology meeting, I don't think it's going to get any farther. But at the same time, NBC, what are you expecting more? Because it sounds like, I'm sorry, not NBC, but it's almost like those certain Hispanic groups out there. I get your anger completely, but what more are you asking NBC to do? Because like, we want NBC to do more. I'm like, well, what else do you want him to do? He's not on the air anymore. Do you want more? And I hate to say this, because the only way it seems to satisfy some people is to give them what they want, which in a way is what they're not asking for. Which I'm going to go ahead and say it, just because I think it seems to be the only natural course of action. I think they want more diversity. I just wish they'd just go ahead and say it. If you want more diversity on these groups out there speaking, then just say it. It's almost along the same sound like we say it. Like, we always sit there and say, I don't expect a white person to talk about black issues. I expect a black person to talk about black issues because they will be the most qualified to talk about it. I would expect a woman to talk about woman issues because she's the most qualified to talk about it. I would ask a Native American about Native American issues because they're the most qualified to talk about it. So again, there's nothing wrong with demanding that, yes, if they're going to talk about something, that they need to have somebody that can relate to those issues there, instead of a 78-year-old white man that just might seem out of touch and didn't really consider what he was saying. Because I know in this world of politically correctness and how hypersensitive things are, and the fact that you choose your words carefully, I've always said it best. You can be honest, you can be blunt, but you got to be ready to stand on what you say. And I've always been that type of person who's like, look, I'm going to stand on what I say. If it's, not to sound like old girl from Real Housewives of Atlanta, but I said what I said. And I don't say anything out of mouths or whatnot, but like I said, when you're speaking, speak from a place of honesty, speak from a place of facts, speak from a place to where you can relate to. But if you can't relate to it, don't talk about it. I'm sorry, not the fact you can't talk about it, but don't talk about it as if you lived it. And that to me is where it says where Tom Brokaw may have actually failed. And like I said, maybe this will lead to more diverse people on NBC. Time will tell. But then again, the NBC is nothing but colored, nothing but Caucasians. But as Chris Rock put it. But anyway, moving on to our next last story. It's kind of a sad one. If you've been on a rock, you already know about this, especially what happened to I believe the kid's name is Jussie Smollett, and he was talking about the attack that happened on him in Chicago. If you don't know about the story, here it is.
The police are releasing these new images of people they want to question regarding the alleged homophobic and racist attack against Empire actor and singer Jussie Smollett. Authorities are asking for the public's help in identifying the two individuals who police are calling potential persons of interest. Police making these pictures public after combing through hundreds of hours of surveillance video and expanding their initial search area for video. They have not yet found images of an assault, but police say they have found video showing Smollett entering his building with what appears to be a rope around his neck. Trust me, babe, I understand. Smollett is best known for his role in the television series Empire, where he plays Jamal, a black singer who is gay. Smollett, in real life, is black and gay, which may have been the motivation for a possible hate crime against him in Chicago. Authorities say the Empire actor reported that the crime happened about 2 a.m. Tuesday, when two men got his attention by yelling out racial and homophobic slurs. Smollett told police the men then began hitting him in the face and poured an unknown chemical substance on him. He added that at some point during the incident, one of the offenders wrapped a rope around his neck. During a follow-up interview, police say Smollett told them something new. During the attack, the offenders uttered, "This is MAGA country." Smollett told CNN he was shaken by the attack. His publicist says he is out of the hospital and recovering. Police are hoping to learn more about who the people on the surveillance video are. So far, more than a dozen investigators are working this case with the assistance of the FBI. Now, U.S. Congressman from Illinois Bobby Rush is calling for an immediate and sweeping civil rights investigation. Chicago police.
Sorry about that. So basically, I mean, it is sad that it did happen, and I know I've actually had this discussion with other individuals who basically, you know, there seems to be a mixed bag. And let me say this about investigations. The way investigations go, I've always believed the simple fact of the matter is that until it's complete, nothing is said, nothing is concrete. Now, I mean, upon hearing the story the first time, I think it's terrible that, you know, a man who chooses to live his life differently gets assaulted in that way, and then at the same time, folks, you know, will do just crazy things like still hang a rope around a black man's neck and think it's normal behavior. And that to me is fucked up. That to me makes me angry. And like I said, I'm on the other side. I've seen people on the other side go, well, this just doesn't make any sense. You know, why was he out there? Why was he out there at night by himself? I mean, didn't he have security? You know, I mean, and I've heard the more extreme cases, and let me point that out as well, where I've heard people sit there and go, well, he's gay, so you know how gay people do. They go out and they find action, and they find like-minded individuals for certain types of things, and something must have just went wrong, and then, you know, he winds up the way he is. Now, let me also say this, because like I said, we're speaking from an area of knowing the facts. None of the facts at this point have been released about the alleged attack. The alleged attack. We just know that a person was assaulted, was taken to the hospital, and was being treated and released. We don't know, except for his testimony, as far as two individuals, as far as a rope being around his neck, because that's the only thing that seems to be validated, that he was going into a building with a rope around his neck. That, I mean, at that point, it's like, I almost want to sit there and say is that no matter how extreme the story is, I've actually heard some people call it fake. I heard some people call it fake. Some people called it a sex act gone horribly wrong. And like I said, until the actual investigation is complete, we don't need to I mean, my whole thing is speculation. Don't speculate. Like, in my mind, I'm still the simple fact of the matter is that a person who is different still got assaulted. Because that just reminds me of America that yes, you can still, I mean, because of what you look like and that you're different, that you can still be a target. No different than a guy getting beat up at a protest by a whole bunch of people wearing MAGA hats, and 5 of those people are now sitting in jail. Nobody different than a person who's a MAGA supporter took his Dodge Challenger and ran through a crowd at a protest rally, killing 1 person and injuring many. Still not, I mean, nah, like I said before, I am not going to sit there and say otherwise, that those that have that mentality are capable of that, but there is a history associated with these people and violence. But again, until this is all said and done, it needs to remain this way enough to where the police will be able to do their investigation, and hopefully he gets justice. But above all else, it hurts the soul to see somebody get assaulted like that, because, you know, 2019 and we're still getting treated like the 1960s around here, and that alone is just fucking horrible, is what it is. But like I said, it's one of those ongoing cases that I've always sat there and told people, please, oh please, don't speculate, because I know how the world is. The world of gossip is. We're all trying to get information, but at the same time, you're not going to get the information, because unless you're the cop investigating, you're really not going to have the inside scoop on it. So all I got to say on that side is, let's just wait for the investigation to clear out. Glad the man is still around. Because like I said, I've got nothing against people that are different than me. I mean, the funny thing is, people always, here's the thing, and not to go too far into it, I don't know what the stigma is with gay people. It's like, And what I mean by stigma, I mean those that have some sort of issue with gay people. And here's how you know they have an issue. If you could tell one person that two men are getting married and that you know one of them and you're happy for them and all that stuff, and they immediately go, I mean, you can see them tense up, or they turn it into, well, you know, man, yeah, you don't know why a man will love another man, or a woman doesn't love a woman, or go into some type of Bible verse or any type of that bullshit. Those are the ones that have an issue with it. Now, for me, I have no issue, because here's my thing. If the person you want to love is the same sex as you, as long as you two are happy, then y'all are cool in my book. Hey, invite me to the wedding. I know, like I said, I'm there to celebrate happy unions regardless of who you're with. At the same time, if you're successful and you're gay, it's like having family members. Like if my family members were gay and successful, do you think I'll be sitting there? I will be shouting from the rooftops. Because not only on top of the fact that they're successful, they're my family, it's the fact that they're successful, they should be supported. They shouldn't be ostracized. They shouldn't be judged or condemned or anything of that nature. Because they have a right to live their life just as much as I live mine. So again, to me, it's like when I hear stories like that, it's like, it amazes me how much homophobic and xenophobia are still around just because there are some individuals that just simply cannot tolerate someone different from them, but will swear up and down they have a problem with them. Tell me I'm wrong. And when you say, oh, hey, Vaughn, you're watching, you just want cake, and so do I. You know what? It depends. And I'm not getting sidetracked. Here's the thing about wedding cakes. It depends on who makes the cakes, by the way. Because I have seen there have been some good wedding cake, and then there's been some awesome wedding cake. But let me tell you something. I have seen crappy wedding cake. I have seen crappy department store, expired Betty Crocker yellow cake surrounded by frosting, and of course you have to be nice and eat a piece of it, but it tastes like cardboard with sprinkles. I've had that. And then I've had I remember this one couple, I'm not going to say their names, but this one couple I love to death. They got married last year. Man, the wedding cake they had was some was some red velvet cheesecake. They went out the box with it. Red velvet cheesecake for a wedding cake. Man, I'm almost certain I was tempted to take some of that doggone cake home with me. And it was divine. But then again, I digress. Because, part of the celebration is that, I do want to have that cake. I do want to have some of that cake at weddings. Like I said, I love a good wedding. I love a good wedding as far as just watching two people get married and confess their love. And I'm cool with that, whether or not it's a man or a woman, woman and a man and a man. Hell, I've seen a polygamous wedding. And I had no problem with it. I was just wondering how they're gonna fix the bed situation. But hey, maybe they got it figured out. Not my place. As long as everybody's happy. What did you say, Vaughn? He had yellow cake. Yeah, it was yellow. It was yellow cake. And let me tell you something. Please don't have yellow cake. Chocolate cake, caramel cake, upside down cake, soccer Timmy cake. There are so many cakes out there, but I sound like a dude that just, it's my cheat day, so I can turn around and just eat whatever I want. But again, I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, let me get onto this, because this is far beyond what I want to talk about. Thank you, Vaughn, for that. So I always leave with two good. I always call it good news stories. The reason why I call it good news stories is because in this day and age, we have so much shit going on that it all seems depressing. It all seems sad. And honestly, I try to find two good stories that honestly, make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. And one of them, and I wish they didn't find this person, but apparently they did. So I was looking at this on my friend Vaughn's Random as Fuck podcast, which is also every Saturday. No, Vaughn, you're fine. No, don't apologize, dude, because everybody's talking about the story I want to talk about too. So you didn't crowd me over. You're good. Actually, you actually gave me a hellfire idea to actually welcome this in. So, dude, you trust me. You're good. You didn't mess anything up. So not all people wear capes. So this one woman in the polar vortex, which is another thing I'm gonna say, guys, if climate change at this point is not real, then please explain the polar vortex, because the polar vortex is literally the Antarctic winds that come up from the North Pole straight down here, and they're the reason why most of the North kind of looks like Antarctica right now, and that most areas, especially like in Chicago, New York, Montana, Maine, Vermont, all those have like during this week they had temperatures of 15 to 20 below freezing. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what below freezing does, if you ever been outside and the weather was like 5 degrees, okay, you know how cold you felt at 5 degrees? Okay, at 15 below, you don't feel shit, and that's a problem. So anyway, going back to what I was saying about this, so there was one individual that did something really great for Chicago, and I just thought that she should get some recognition for it.
Dozens of homeless Chicago residents off the streets during historic cold temperatures earlier this week. CBS Chicago reports it all started with Candace Payne's first act of kindness, and then it snowballed into a life-saving effort by a group of strangers on the city's south side. On Wednesday, many people living in a tent city had to pack up and move out after one of their propane tanks that was being used for heat exploded. Volunteer Candace Payne started it all impulsively, charging 20 hotel rooms on her American Express card after realizing how dangerous the temperatures would be. That's when other volunteers also dug deep into their pockets and picked up the tab for a total of 60 hotel rooms for homeless men and women during the cold snap. Jermaine and Robert told CBS Chicago that Candace is their angel. They said they don't get that type of help very often, and they really needed it at that point, and Candace came at the right time. In all, her efforts led the volunteer group to being able to cover 3 nights at the hotel for at least 80 people.
Oh, sorry, I lost my mic for a second. So that itself is actually very cool. Simple fact of the matter is that a woman was actually able to do that, and be able to go in and actually help people that need to be helped, because I've always said it best. It's amazing to me in this country that, we got an idiot asking multiple billions for a wall that could actually turn around, and that same money could be used to provide homeless shelter, to provide a lot more than just shelters. I mean, we have homes that are foreclosed that can be turned around and be made into homes for people to live in and actually get them off the streets, especially in this weather. But again, it's one of those things to where one person does that, and I thought to myself, as I'm watching that, I was like, well, that is cool, like I said. And Vaughn, I don't know if you heard me or not, dude. You didn't mess anything up. I just want to let you know that. But it amazes me so that, one individual could have that type of kindness and be able to help people like that. And on the other side, I need to step my game and get American Express, because I was trying to do the math in my head. She and a group of volunteers got 3 nights at a hotel for 80 people. And I'm not knocking on girls' credit limit. I'm just saying, American Express is that gold. You know what? Let me be real for a second. I'm gonna be honest with you. This is just a confession. This is just a confession on my part. I have nothing. I mean, this is confessions time. I mean, in the words of Brady Mac, we family. We family. I can talk about this. It's family. Oh wow. Frederick Walton, is this blurred content or politics strictly? For this podcast is more along the lines of Politics Daily News. We do have a blurred content, which I will get into very shortly, and I'll let you know about that. But yeah, it's like so confession time on this. It's just that, American Express is one of those cars you hope to get, but it depends on your certain try to get up there. But at the same time, if an individual like that can turn around and do that kind of thing for people, that to me is amazing, and the fact that it should be celebrated. Now, I know a lot of people, want to play the mysterious anonymous donor, and I get that. You don't want publicity, and that's cool too. But I just want to show the fact that, some people can actually go out there and actually do great things like that, if you will. But yes, Frederick, this is actually more of a politics strictly. I won't say politics strictly. We go politics daily news here on How the Frack We Got Here. But then again, I'm going to explain the other shows that actually go into blurred content as well. Just in the broadcast, so just bear with me for a second on that. And finally, the last thing I do want to talk about is the fact of another good news segment. Is just that for a lot of us, come tomorrow, we probably will be watching the Super Bowl. Reason being because, let's be honest, there's really not a lot of things on there. You know, whether you're a Rams fan or a Patriots fan or just a fan that got mad, or if you're the Saints that are still pissed off about the call, chances are you will be watching. But like I said, with Super Bowl that comes on, there's usually commercials. And let's be honest, those commercial slots of 30 seconds and, $2 to $5 million for a 30-second commercial spot, you're hoping for good ones. Because like I said, the last few couple Super Bowl commercials have been, kind of bad. But if you want to actually see a preview of what's actually going on, and I just thought this was funny because the fact of how far Cardi B has came up, this is actually the preview of what they may be showing for Super Bowl Sunday.
Excuse me. I'm a close talker. I'll take a Coke.
Is Pepsi okay?
Is Pepsi okay? Pepsi's more than okay. It's okay. Okay, what have we learned today?
You want a Pepsi?
I want a Pepsi. She wants a Pepsi.
No matter where you're from.
He drinks Coke and she drinks Coke.
Even though they disagree.
And why the bottles look alike?
You aren't the same as me.
Why not, Nacho? They made the original hot. How many Pringles flavor stack combinations are there?
318,000. Sadly, I'll never know the joy of tasting any. For I have no hands to stack with, no mouth to taste with, no soul to feel with. I am at the mercy of a cruel and uncaring...
Cool, play Funky Town.
Do people think I'm nuts? Always there in crunch time.
Cosmopolitan.
Nope, tonight I'll have a Stella Artois.
Wild night, huh? White Russian? No, here, give me a Stella Artois.
Excuse me. Your choice.
Well, change you can do a little good.
How many seas must the white dove sail?
It's beer. So pure you can taste it. Michelob Ultra Pure Gold.
Yes! That's why I wear Skechers slip-ons. They're effortless. You can just slip them on and off. For those who like things easy. Thanks, Trick.
The Super Bowl is coming. Is your bathroom ready?
I'm a close talker, so I was excited about all new Colgate Total. Its breakthrough formula does more.
Wonderful.
Now there's no such thing as too close.
Yes, there it is.
No, there's not.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not.
Yeah, so... a little weird as far as, certain Super Bowl commercials go. So, way weird as far as that goes. So, like I said, if you're looking forward to it, I'm not saying that we're going to have a great crop of commercials, but some might be funny, some might just be up and weird. But we're probably going to leave that here for right now. So Frederick Walton, this is about blurred content. So let me explain how the Frack We Got Here before I get out of here. So how the Frack We Got Here is a politics show where we try to basically take all the news and views of the U.S. and of the world and pretty much try to report on the things that are not always being reported on. So hopefully if you've been watching this and you like it, and like I said, we usually do this every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. You are more than welcome to watch. I actually do have another show that's going to be later on today called How the Frack We Got. From How the Frack We Got Here, which is actually playing right now. My apologies. The other show I have is called Off Limits, where nothing is off limits. It is definitely a show that is not for the faint of heart. And honestly, it goes into topics that you normally wouldn't talk about. But like I said, we go there just because no one else does. I'm not the only guy that actually has shows that goes on out here. My other friend Vaughn, A71 Spoon on Facebook, also has several shows himself. He actually has the I Get That Reference BST, which is a 30-minute podcast, which is just going over various news, video games, and just overall things that he finds informative that you may also find informative as well. Interactive show just like mine. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm. He actually had a Reminisce this week where he goes over certain albums to engrave into a 4-tier system and just pretty much wants to get people out there to introduce them to different types of music that you may not already know about. If you want to know what that 4-tier system is, you have to watch Rhythmness to find out. Also, he has Random as Fuck with Uncle Beezy, which actually just premiered, was just on about a little bit before my show, in which he just goes over the randomness, wackiness, things in our world and decides to share them along. All 3 of his shows completely interactive as well. My other good friend Thomas Reed, also Thomas Reed on Facebook, will have his show to be determined podcast later today at 3 o'clock. To be determined is a workout podcast, because if you've seen my friend Thomas, he is as he calls himself, a gym rat, which means he always stays in the gym. He seems to think about the gym, and really, he doesn't really have any rest days. He just has one forced rest day he has to take, but, love and death. But anyway, To Be Determined podcast is a workout podcast where he just goes over certain workouts, things you can do, things you can eat, things of that nature, and pretty much gives his own personal testimony as far as, the do's and don'ts of where basically if you're trying to work or lose weight, he's the guy you need to follow. But again, his podcast 3 p.m. On Saturday as well. My other friend Trace Brown, DJ King 81 on Facebook, he also has The Bump Down, which is the musical podcast where he goes over what's hot on the charts and what's not on the charts. Pretty much what's coming on the mainstream and underground. And like I said, for a guy, he has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the recording industry. And honestly, if you just want to learn about it, or if you're an up-and-coming artist that wants to have his music played on the Bump Down, pretty much reach out to King Eddie Wayne about that. Terry Sprout on Facebook. He also has the Smoke of Truth, where it is a podcast where it is the unorthodox. It is the out there, but it is hard hitting, in your face, and it is the brutal truth for all those that want all the smoke. But again, also, like I said, very intelligent brother. Would definitely recommend listening to him. Now, all these podcasts that I've just talked about can all be found on the Facebook group. I Get That Reference. It is a group that's open to all. You merely just have to join. And the only requirement that we have is that you participate, which means you're liking, you're sharing, you're just being conversating. I mean, it's Facebook. You're supposed to be social, not a creeper. And aside from that, our YouTube pages are actually up and live. So if you look up I Get That Reference, you look up The Bump Down, you look up How the Frack We Got Here, you look up To Be Determined Podcast, you look up Off Limits Podcast. All those have live YouTube pages to where all our videos are stored up to date, and you can like, share, and subscribe from there. So the last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here is that the whole process of this is staying informed and stay woke. Now, staying informed means that we are basically not taking the news that we see at face value. We are actually going beyond that, finding the stories that need to be said, saying the things that need to be done, at the same time presenting you all the facts we found in order to inspire you to go out there and do the same. Because when you're informed, you can make wiser decisions than a person that's uninformed. And just staying woke means that you're not just listening to the bullshit. It's not the fact that you're just trying to celebrate a new level of consciousness. It is you just trying to tell the truth in the best way and form that you possibly can, without actually not compromising, which means that you don't always, like I said, accept things at face value. So if you can do all those things and we can pass it along, hopefully our community becomes stronger and makes wiser decisions, because an uninformed community got us Trump. So again, that's actually going to be it for the How the Frack We Got Here podcast today. Thank you guys all for watching, and if you're watching this on the playback, just feel free to go ahead and reply as if you're live, because all you Trump supporters love to do that 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning, but still got love for you. Aside from that, guys, stay informed, stay woke. Have a good weekend. Peace.